Hello, 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 everybody. This is exciting. This is exciting. Welcome to our very first Zoomcast known as SWIWCtok. I am your host, Auntie Memory, aka Auntie Em. You can call me Auntie Em. And I am joined with my fellow fierce aunties, Auntie Rose and Auntie Chels. A little bit about me. I'm an enrolled member of the Standing Rock Sioux Tribe, and I'm also the Domestic Violence Response Director here at SWIC. I've been with SWIC since 2022, but I've been in the work since 2012. Auntie Rose is our resident brilliant legal mind. You want to go ahead and introduce yourself, Auntie?
Yes, yes. Hey, aunties. Hey, everybody. So excited. Thank you for joining our first ever SWIC
Zoom.
Talk, which is a playoff of TikTok, but SWIC Talk.
Clever, clever.
Clever. Thanks, Auntie Em. Thanks, Chels, for being here, Chelsa. So my name is Rose Quilt. I am Yakima and Lummi from my grandmother's side. Grew up in White Swan, Washington on my res. I'm here, as a survivor, as a grandma, as a mom. Many of you in the movement. We're working hard within our communities for hopefully transformative change. And so I'm just excited to be here and lock arms with you. I'm the policy director at SWIC, and long story with SWIC. I started off with them, and then I've circled back with them. And so, thank you, SWIC, for having me. So I will turn it over to Chelsea, our next auntie.
Hey, Kishi. Hope everyone's doing well. My name is Chelsa. I'm going by Auntie Chels. As everybody knows me as Auntie Chels. Ask Auntie, call an Auntie. But I am from Zuni, the Pueblo of Zuni in New Mexico, and we are considered one of the 22 tribes here in Arizona. I have resided here in Arizona for the last 34 years. My roots run deep with both states, and therefore I am so grateful to be in the space and the community here with SWIC that has brought me on as a project director in April. Um, I am just so happy and excited to bring to SWIC Talk some of my opinions and talking topics as well. So thank you for having me, ladies, and Keshi to all. Hello to all.
That's awesome. I realized that the one thing that we did not do is talk about SWIC. What is SWIC? So, SWIC is an acronym for the Southwest Indigenous Women's Coalition. We are Arizona's statewide tribal domestic and sexual violence coalition. We are 10 staff. There's 10 of us now. When I started in 2022, I was staff number 4. And so, in just a few short years' time, SWIC has really, really grown. So, as the statewide tribal domestic and sexual violence coalition, our vision is to have safe Indigenous communities, and our mission is to increase the capacity of Arizona's tribes to respond to domestic violence, sexual assault, human trafficking, etc., to respond to violence in their respective communities. And we do that through training, technical assistance, policy advocacy, we have Rose, outreach, education, etc. That's a little bit about who we are and what we are doing. This is our first inaugural Zoomcast. Our intention with this Zoomcast is to really begin to talk about those things that we don't talk about, right? Specifically, sexual violence. And this is a good time to remind everyone that we are going to be talking about sexual violence. We're going to be talking about our history. And it's likely a history that you did not learn in school. Huh? And
And with
so, yeah,
and
go
with
ahead.
that, just to take care of yourself,
Thank you. That's right.
should you need to step back
Mhm.
or have your medicines with you,
Mhm.
we encourage that as well, because again, some of these things may raise some feelings up for you, some strong feelings, some memories, and so again, we just want to be mindful of that, but also just a reminder, take care of you. You are the medicine. You know what you need, so do what you need to do.
Absolutely. Thank you for that reminder, Rose. So as we are doing this, I think I'm going to light some sage just to sort of set, let's fill this space with medicine as we get into it. So our intention with the Zoomcast is we are going to be talking about those topics that we don't discuss. Largely sexual violence. That's the big one. That's the taboo subject that we don't talk about, that we know is pervasive across Indian country. So specifically, because we are so close to September 30th, today is Friday, September 26th, I thought we could talk about September 30th as the National Day for Truth and Reconciliation. September 30th is the observance that honors the survivors of residential schools and remembers those that did not return home. Also known as Orange Shirt Day, this day draws its name from the story of Phyllis Webstad, whose orange shirt was a gift from her grandmother, was confiscated on her first day of residential school in 1973. So, what are residential boarding schools, you ask? So, cue for the short educational portion of this Zoomcast. Native American boarding schools, also known as Indian boarding schools, were established by the United States government in the late 19th century. It was an effort to force assimilate Indigenous youth into mainstream American culture through education. This was one spoke in a very large wheel of cultural genocide and forced assimilation for our ancestors, and really to eradicate everything of Indigenous culture, of tribal traditions, and make those youth more palatable to Anglo-American society. This was not a choice. This was not these families deciding that they wanted to send their children off to get an education for a better life. This was government policy. It was the law. It was established by a piece of legislation that sounds very benign. It sounds very innocuous. The Civilization Fund Act of 1819 was really what the pertinent piece of legislation that ushered in the boarding school era. It initiated government support for educating Indigenous students, meaning youth, and eventually led to the establishment of numerous boarding schools across the United States. And by numerous, we mean, I think it was 561, but I'm not 100% certain on that number, but it was over 500. The era of the Native American boarding schools began in the 1860s with the first ever residential boarding schools, known as the Carlisle Industrial School. And the Carlisle Industrial School it was an old army barracks. And I think that the founder of that school was military and ran it like a boot camp of sorts. But what we don't really talk about is the impact, right? The immediate impact that those assimilation efforts have. The prevailing ideology that passed through this piece of legislation was kill the Indian to save the man. So kill the Indian of everything that makes him Indian and save the man to be assimilated into mainstream Western culture, right? That was the intent. They went to those schools. They were not being taught how to cure cancer, STEM, or, they weren't taught how to get us to the moon. Girls were taught to be servants. They were taught to cook and clean. Boys were taught to be farmhands and laborers. They were intended to serve Anglo-American society, should they make it out of those schools. But that's just we haven't even talked about the horrors that existed in those schools. So we know from numerous stories that sexual abuse was rampant, physical abuse. I think one of the greatest representations that I've seen of what our ancestors must have experienced would be the Deer Woman episode from Reservation Dogs. If you see that when the young people get there, they're sitting there and all these adults that don't look like them are yelling at them in gibberish. And that had to be just how it was like, right? They didn't speak English. Um, Rampant sexual abuse. I train on this all the time. People do not understand. And I ask when I'm training on this to non-native audiences, I say, go home tonight and ask your grandparents, your parents, your primary caregivers if there were ever any graveyards at the schools they went to.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And
Right.
I'm gonna guarantee you that the answer is no.
Right. Right.
And so as we are talking about this, I consider boarding schools to be the origin story of many of the social issues in our tribal communities.
Mhm.
Domestic violence. We didn't see domestic violence begin to happen in our communities until those first generations came home. We know that people cope with trauma in ways that they cope with trauma, right? So we have high incidence of substance use and alcohol. We have maladaptive coping mechanisms, parenting practices, right? If you
Mhm.
remember, those first generations were removed from their families of origin, their communities of origin, their traditions, and their culture. And they were brought up in an environment to be made ashamed of who they were,
Right.
to be, beaten, raped, and maybe killed, starved, experimented on. I mean, these babies suffer, right? If they made it back. And that is a big if, right? If they made it back, they came back traumatized. And then
Right.
because it was still the law of the land, the next generation went, and the next generation went, and rinse and repeat.
Right.
Um, I am second generation removed from boarding schools. My grandparents went, and they had made the decision to not teach their children the language. It was a protective factor, right?
Mhm.
You can't be beaten for speaking your language if you don't know it. But
Right.
what that was is, I think it illustrates just how effective those boarding schools were, because that is a huge part of culture that is killed for us. Our histories, our traditions, our myths, our legends, all of those are wrapped up in our songs
Our
are
song.
wrapped up in our language. And if we don't know it, we are missing an integral part of our culture. Um,
Right.
that's my little soapbox moment. I will tell you that, like I said, I'm second generation removed, and that my grandparents, they battled their scars for the rest of their life for their time at boarding school. And I'm not going to get too much into the nitty-gritty of that. Suffice to say that I don't think that some of their experiences are any different than many of our relatives still suffering in Indian country. But I've talked quite a bit, guys. I'm sorry. I'm just kind of, I can go on and on about this, but I really want to hear you all. What is your take on this? How has residential schools impacted you, your life, your community?
Mhm. Memory, or Auntie Em, it's the same. It what you shared and how that impacted your family,
Mhm.
very much similar within my community, among our peoples. You know, we're talking about domestic violence and sexual assault, but also trafficking.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
This is also trafficking, and I know that many of our nations and our tribal leaders are looking at trafficking as, they're scratching their heads and saying this is actually happening. Well, this was introduced, way back when. I mean, Columbus, this was introduced at contact, and so boarding schools was a way of trafficking our native children.
Oh yeah.
And then you look at the other systems, how it's been perpetuated over the years, and that it's now the foster care system
Oh yeah.
and it's the juvenile justice system that we are losing our native children. And so again, that policy of breaking down us as strong tribal nations
Mhm.
and then going, micro to our families, but we are also very much, communal too. So again, breaking down that system, our kinship systems that have sustained our people for thousands and thousands of years. The government, this government sanctioned violence, they knew what they were doing. And because of the impact, everything you're talking about that we're seeing, maladaptive parenting,
Mhm.
the addictions and, again, and how we look at addictions, it's just more of our people that are trying to like medicate themselves, how to take care of their pain. And like you said, when our songs are taken away, our language is taken away, our ceremonies,
Our
you know,
medicine.
being punished,
Hmm.
then that also that sense of being able to heal, to
Yes.
bring that healing forward, the healing of not just your mind and body, but the spirit. the souls of those babies of our ancestors. It's just it's crushing because again, we carry that trauma.
Yeah.
And I know that, many of us know and understand that intergenerational trauma and how that gets passed through our, down to our cellular level.
Right.
Mhm.
But I think we too, in this time and age, since we understand that, we also know that healing,
Yeah.
by healing ourselves and breaking the cycle, with that goes back and that can heal our ancestors. And so it's with tears in my eyes that we're talking about this, with such sorrow in my heart and in my spirit. But also it's because I know that there's the power of healing as well. And so it's with this that, all of us aunties in this SWIWCtok also share our prayers too. It's an important issue that we continue to raise awareness and to, because this isn't taught in the history books. We all know this as well. And that this particular piece of legislation, that kicked this all off, that's not, nobody knows about it. Like you said, it sounds like it's a,
It sounds like it's a good thing. All right.
yeah,
That's
you
right.
know. But yeah, it was devastating. So,
It is
um,
still devastating. I mean,
it
the impacts are still felt right now, present day. Yeah.
right, right. So I'll stop there and let Auntie Chels.
Well, I mean, that's just it. It unfortunately comes around full circle. However, we are still resilient. We are still ready to continue the healing. Unfortunately, our grandparents and our grandfathers, our granduncles, our grandmothers, who went through that, um, being taken away from families and not being able to speak, got their government name, got their English name, and now just trying to restore that back. I know that my pueblo is going back to, saying our last names correctly. Like right now, my name, well, it's Sisiwa, but back then it was Tiwa, more of the traditional
Yeah.
from get-go, besides the ABC of, the colonization that we have to learn. And just coming back full circle, despite the trauma, we're still restoring our culture one way or another through language, through ceremonies. And some of the survivors, they're probably in their 80s, 70s, 80s. They're finding strength now. They're able to pull out what has happened, and it's restoring them and helping the future generation, by not being miserable or not being punishable to us. you know um I just feel it's coming around full circle again, and with the recognition of Orange Day, or being able to, it's okay to speak about it, breaking the silence, breaking the silence, because not trying to get emotional, but just wondering why my granduncles were always quiet, and then they stayed bachelors, but then, deep down inside, they still cared for us, all the nieces and nephews. Um, I wonder what they were thinking. They were never taught to let it out, and I think this is what we're meant to be. We're meant to be here to talk about this hard topic, and allowing that release for them. And I can just imagine their gratitude, in heaven, and just letting them know that it's okay. It's okay now to talk. We need to let it out, so to protect our future generations. So,
I want to piggyback off of what you just
yeah,
said, Chelsea, because one and Rose, you said it, and I think I might have even mentioned it. This is not taught in school.
yeah,
And
no,
we have seen now, I mean, I can pinpoint in real time the harm that comes by not learning from your past. Okay, we had residential schools. We had hundreds. How long were they in operation? Till
yeah.
1980 something?
Mm-hmm.
So, I don't know how many years that is. I'm a social worker. I'm not a math person, but many years. tens of years. Yes.
Yes.
We have this history, right? We don't talk about it. It's not taught in school. And then fast forward to a few years ago, was Arizona not putting little brown children in cages?
Uh-huh.
You
Yep.
know, the harm in not speaking about your past is
Hmm.
that you're almost, not necessarily, but almost always doomed to repeat it, right?
Yes.
Right.
Um, and this is part of why we wanted to do this Zoomcast, why we wanted to bring these taboo topics to the table. Let's talk about it because we can't heal what we don't acknowledge. We can't change what we don't acknowledge. And we can't collectively come together and talk about it if some of us are still silent. And
Right.
so I'm
Exactly.
hoping after our inaugural Zoomcast, and thank you all for joining us today. Next week's topic is probably going to be a little heavy as well, but we want to make sure that as we're starting this Zoomcast now, that as we're talking about these taboo subjects, that we let you know, one, take care of yourself, do something gentle and nice for yourself today, and just know that you're not alone. And Swick is here to talk about it.
Right. And
Yes.
to also let you know that, as we talk about like this issue and issues going forward and how policy is wrapped up into that. And I also just want to mention that there has been tremendous work and efforts being done on, with regards to the boarding school issue.
Mhm.
And I think back to Deb Haaland,
Mhm.
the U.S. Secretary of Interior, when she was in office, um, that they came out with the boarding school investigative reports
Yeah.
Mhm.
from 2022 and 2024. And the final report has, 8 recommendations, such as, one, issuing a formal acknowledgement and apology from the
And that
U.S.
happened.
government.
And
Yeah.
that happened. Yeah.
Right. Regarding its role in adopting
Mhm.
and implementing, the federal Indian boarding school policy. And also, not only was it adopted and implemented, but also with funding.
Mhm.
With the reports that came out that there was over $23.3 billion appropriated to go towards funding the boarding schools between about 1871 and to 1969. So again, this is very much, state sanctioned, the federal government.
Mhm.
And so a lot of harms, in addition to all the other policies that we talk about,
Right.
like the Dawes Act, the, termination and
Yeah.
all that whole slew. This is linked arm in arm again to just really dismantle our nations, our families. And then also to recognize too that again, we have organizations like NABS, the National Native American Boarding School Healing Coalition. They've done tremendous work in really raising awareness about the negative impacts of boarding schools. And that came about in about 2011. And just to, quickly say as we're wrapping up our podcast today that there is a bill that has been introduced by Senator Lisa Murkowski from Alaska.
Mhm.
It's S761, the Truth and Healing Commission on Indian Boarding School Policies Act of 2025. And what the bill proposes is establishing a formal commission to investigate, document, and report about, the very injustices that we're talking about. And how again that sprang from the federal government. And they just want to examine the effects of the policies, again, just everything we're talking about,
Yeah.
how it's really infringed upon, it includes human rights violations, right?
Thank you. Because absolutely, these were babies.
Right,
Yes.
And their
Exactly.
only harm is that they were born brown.
right.
That's it.
And the suppression of our indigenous cultures, our languages, songs, ceremonies.
The
Yes,
continued refusal to honor tribal sovereignty.
right,
I mean, this is
right.
all part and parcel.
And also what we're sharing too is to collect testimonies.
Hmm.
Like Chelsea said, to for our relatives, hopefully they'll feel safe in wherever they are in their healing journey to step forward as a survivor to share their experience in a culturally respectful, space.
Mm.
And then lastly, I think also it's to develop recommendations. And so there are things that you can continue to do in your work as it relates to our work. So just continue to monitor that. This bill, like I said, it's S761, which was introduced this year.
So that's a Senate bill then, yeah?
Yeah. And so, so it hasn't made its way forward yet, but
Has
just
it made
monitor.
committee?
Mhm.
Has it been put into committee yet?
I, I don't know. I
Okay.
would have to double check that.
All right. Well, keep us posted because I didn't know I was going to be a policy person, but I totally am, and that's what I love just to learn from you, Rose, because you're so brilliant.
Mhm.
Yes.
Well, okay, so in March, the Senate Committee on Indian Affairs, which
Okay.
Murkowski chairs,
Okay.
reviewed and unanimously approved the bill, advancing it in the process.
Okay.
But by July of this year, so it was reported out in the Senate Committee
Mm-hmm.
on Indian Affairs and placed on the Senate legislative calendar.
Okay.
So marking a step before it can be considered by the full Senate.
Okay. All right. Well, it's in process.
Yeah. So
And I
yeah.
think, for people that the general public, right? I don't think people are truly aware of how difficult it is to
Mhm.
get things passed. Well, that's a lie because we've seen things pushed through Congress with lightning speed, lose
Yeah.
everything, right? But with regard to this,
Yeah.
it takes a very long time for, and I think it's an oversimplification, but I kind of believe it,
Okay.
that if you look at our history, and like I said, I've become a student of our history, and if you can connect the relevant public policy to the issue that we are discussing, it's all there. It's
Mhm.
all there. It's all there in the archives. It's all there on the books as this is the law of the land. And so it seems an oversimplification to say that policy is the answer, but I truly believe that policy is an answer. I don't think it's the answer. But that's what makes policy so interesting to me. But I'm not going to nerd out on it because we are ending this very soon. So I'm
No,
not
but it's true. I mean,
it
we
is.
as indigenous peoples we are highly regulated by
Oh gosh, more regulated
Oh
than
my
any
God.
other people.
so
Dogs and natives have our blood quantum tracked. That's
Exactly.
it.
Yep.
Dogs
Yes.
and natives.
yeah.
Um,
Yeah. So I mean, so policy it is important. I mean, it is
it
and
is
it
a foundational
Yes.
right. And it
issue.
takes all of us, right? It not one of us can carry the water. And when you look at this issue, it takes survivors stepping forward with their
It
testimony.
takes
That's right.
lawmakers.
It takes
It-
relatives
Makes
like Deb
sense.
Holland, who
Yes.
thank you, Sister
Yes.
Holland,
Thank you. Thank you.
again, for doing this while she was at the
Mhm.
Department of Interior. So again, it's all of those things that, again, that we can build on each other.
And it's coming, it's coming. The time is now, and it's even though this bill's going to take some time to become official, it's a call to action. It's
Mhm.
to listen, it's to learn, and it's to support our native-led healing programs and sexual assault violent programs that need to be out there in the communities. Sometimes they're pushed out, but yet our people are crying for this work. So once that bill is passed, oh God, don't let keep we're coming full force with that to our tribal communities. Definitely. We need the closure. We
And
need
we
this.
need the healing.
We need the
Yes.
healing.
Want
Yes.
so much.
Yes.
And
That's
again,
exactly it.
we know healing can't just happen in a day. We understand that healing is a lifelong journey.
But healing starts with acknowledgement.
Right.
Healing
Exactly.
starts with accountability. Healing
Yeah.
starts with saying, yes, this happened. Yes, we did it,
Yeah.
and we were wrong. Now, we got that. It might have been somewhat of a political step, but we got it. We got acknowledgement. We
Yes.
did this and we were wrong. And so for that, I was grateful.
And again, I know we're going to close, but I want to share this quote
Sure.
by N. Scott Momaday from
Okay.
Housemaid of Dawn. It's on the NAB's website.
Okay.
And it says, or he says, they have assumed the names and gestures of their enemies, but have held on to their own secret souls. And in this, there is a resistance and an overcoming, a long outwaiting.
Yeah, Rose.
Well done, Rosie. Why you gotta hit us with that?
Auntie Rose.
Well, yeah.
Oh,
That
I
was
felt
deep.
that. I felt
Deep.
that in my core. That was
Yeah.
a good one.
Yeah.
I don't think we have any better outro than that. Thank you all for joining us. We will see you again next time.
Thank you.
Thank you, Auntie Rose. Thank you, Auntie Chels.
Yes.
SWIWCtok.
Yep.
Till next time.
Bye.
Dalapa.
Be gentle on yourself.
Yep.
Yeah.